All right, welcome back to AWANI with me, Nabila Khalida. Earlier, we had our colleague Haris Ashraf Hasnan with his guest discussing another important topic. And we're still at Mandarin Oriental, Kuala Lumpur for Khazanah Megatrends Forum, or KMF 2024, where we discuss about the trends, the global trends that will shape our future industry, but not just industry as a whole, but the whole how we live, how we think, and how we discuss about not just technology, but also how we, the whole landscape of industry that we live in right now. So right now for today, we want to discuss further, dive deeper on how these global megatrends are not just abstract concepts, but also a tangible process that is impacting the broader economic landscape. So to discuss further on the specific topic about brain drain and how it impacting the emerging economies. Joining me right now today is Raja Hamzah Abidin, the Board of Director, TalentCorp. Thank you so much for joining me right now here at Mandarin Oriental for KMF 2024. Perhaps we could start. How would you describe the whole ecosystem of brain drain, not just in Malaysia, but the other countries in the same region?
Okay, number one, talent is a key issue for all countries in the globe right now. Whether you're talking about Taiwan, China, Malaysia, Singapore, talent is probably one of the key issues for every multinational out there. So brain drain is a problem not only for Malaysia, but for most countries in the world. What we can do as a country is to attract the right talent to come back. I think that's one. Number two is to incentivize new and industries that can pay well, the likes of semiconductors, data centers, technology. These are the sectors that are able to pay good salaries or can pay USD type salaries back in Malaysia. Number three is by investing in training programs. I think that's key. As our in TalentCorp, what we're doing down south with Johor and Singapore, we're investing a lot of cross-border training programs, cross-border internships between Singaporeans and Malaysian companies. I think that will create win-win situations for all market players to increase the wages, because I feel like brain drain is not the key issue. Actually, it's about a wage gap, about addressing that wage gap, closing the wage gap between Malaysia, Singapore and its peers, and creating more high-value, high-income opportunities for all our staff.
Raja, before we go dive deeper into this discussion of the topic brain drain, can you actually help us understand what are the driving factors to these issues? Because it's not something new, right? Not just in Malaysia, like I mentioned earlier, it's a global issue. So what could be the driving factors? Is it different from before pandemic and also after pandemic?
Okay, I think now with the work from home and working remotely job functions, brain drain is probably less of an issue than before because people can work from anywhere but still earn a Singapore dollar or US dollar income, right? If I look at where a lot of Malaysians are, actually the key countries are in the UK, Singapore, Indonesia, and Hong Kong to a certain extent, right? So these are all hubs for Malaysians overseas. So I think what we need to do is to engage them. I think sometimes one is they can come back to return to Malaysia. But number two is I think engaging them in terms of helping out mentorship opportunities to give them to help to, let's say, the startup ecosystem. We have success stories in the UK. For example, I have a friend who I went to university with. She started a startup and now she just raised $50 million of capital, and I'm getting her to mentor some startups over here in Malaysia. So I think if how we frame brain drain is important, right? If we think of it as just a one-way street where everyone's just leaving the country, I think it's a very unproductive discussion. But we think of them as our assets going overseas, learning and maybe coming back, or maybe contributing in a different way. I think that's a lot more exciting for the ecosystem. And again, at Khazanah Megatrends today, in terms of how we understand AI, the dynamics in China, India, I think there's a lot of dynamics where actually net Malaysia is a beneficiary, but we must do something about it versus just letting it steady state just grow by itself. So we need to take it by the horns and actually create value for us to create more high-income jobs in Malaysia.
Honestly speaking, we can actually see some initiatives that was done by our kerajaan, our government, under the Kerajaan Madani. But speaking of which, we want to look at the technological advancements right now. We have AI and we're moving towards Industry 5.0. It's not IR 4.0 anymore, it's 5.0 right now. So looking at all these advancements and also we have automations as well, do you see that this movement or rapid movement can actually impact towards the retention of talents in Malaysia?
I think it's with AI, it's actually a lot more exciting to be in Malaysia rather than before. What I see now is Malaysia, it's a good crossroads of affordable costs, but at the same time, it's a breeding ground for the China Plus One strategy. What that means, I would say I'll break down to three main hubs, right? One is Penang, with the tailwind of semiconductor companies needing to move to Southeast Asia to diversify their production base from China and Taiwan, this creates a golden opportunity for us to attract high-level manufacturing, advanced packaging. These are stuff that will never come to Malaysia before because we never forward invested in them. Now these are the kind of people who are interested in moving to Malaysia and spending time in Malaysia to grow this kind of business. So number one, if I look at Penang, super exciting. Number two, down south in Johor, speaking to some of the Singaporean peers, there's a lot of companies willing to move some of their operations over because Singapore is just becoming too expensive, right? So again, AI is where you need high-level talent, right? So again, Johor has to solve that talent gap. Where do we get engineering talent? How do we get affordable engineering talent? I invested in a company in Singapore called StackUp, right? And they plug into blockchain talent across the globe. And actually, the key sources of blockchain talent is still, let's say, in Vietnam, in the US. But actually, Malaysia has its own share of blockchain developers. How do we tap into that to actually grow the blockchain ecosystem? So this is one of the examples where we have some bright spots, but we've always focused on the difficulties. We will never get there. So again, I think where I look at myself from a TalentCorp point of view, we are trying to understand the gaps that AI creates in the job market. That's number one. And by understanding the gaps, we know where to retrain some of our staff. We know where to focus in terms of the Ministry of Higher Education, some of the courses, and also some of the TVET courses. And then we target so that everyone who graduates from these courses are able to attract high-level paying jobs, right? Versus just, if you have a degree and you just become an admin staff and earn 3,000 ringgit. That is not what we want. We want to create high-level jobs so that everyone can grow together.
Do you think we are at the right lane of going towards that retaining talents in the future?
I believe, I was lucky enough to be able to work in Singapore, in Hong Kong, across a variety of multinational companies. And I look at a lot of my Malaysian friends. They're all very passionate about coming back and contributing. And if you look at the world economy at the moment, China and Hong Kong is struggling. The Europe is struggling. So again, there are a lot of Malaysians in these markets who are looking for opportunities back home so that they can contribute. So again, I feel like now versus before, because of global economic movements, we have ability to attract the best talent to move back, but at the same time, we got to create, the pull factor. What are jobs that are created? For example, I have a friend in the UK working for Google's data center team. He wants to come back, but again, now Google is creating a data center here. There is an opportunity for him to come back. Opportunity for him to move laterally within Google to actually look at the region, to look at data centers. So those are the small tidbits where I feel like, hey, there are success stories around, but we need to actually get more success stories and tell people about it, because if we don't market ourselves as an attractive destination for talent, people won't move over.
And as like what Raja said earlier, we have also interesting push factor or pull factor towards all the talents in the world. But another thing that we can look at is about being the emerging nations like Malaysia. How do we compete with other nations that's already very developed, especially when it comes to offering high-paying jobs, and that doesn't lure away the talents?
Yes. So everyone talks about working in Singapore, but again, people forget that working in Singapore entails very high cost. Rental for a simple apartment is minimum like 4,000 to 5,000 Singapore dollars, so equivalent of 16,000 to 17,000 ringgit. One example, I have a founder friend, he founded a firm called Zendit. They are worth about $3 billion, Indonesian-based, but with operations in Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia. So again, he actually moved over to Malaysia. He brought his whole family. He's origin from Penang, but he moved to the US. And he actually moved the whole family back to Malaysia because he felt that Malaysia, given our cost, given our opportunities for growth, and also as a hub for travel, is still very exciting. So again, there are ways to pull these guys over vis-a-vis our more developed countries, but we offer a different menu. We offer them a menu of livability, costs, and also growth, because again, I think it's still a great place to do business with a 30 million population. And lastly, it's a great place to list businesses as well. The IPO market is booming. We have about 3 billion ringgit of total inflows in the market. So again, I feel like there's a strong tailwind if we can market ourselves right. And I feel like what the ministry is doing, the government is doing in terms of marketing ourselves to foreign investors is going through the right way. The ringgit is moving well, the stock market is doing well. We just need to continue this tailwind. So it's not just a one-year effect, it's a multi-year effect that rolls over to the next generation.
We are doing good, guys. We are doing good for Malaysia in terms of the ringgit, like you mentioned, and then also the markets. But the future economy that we're looking at right now is about healthcare and also green economy and also fintech, financial technology. Yeah. But do you think our local upskilling and reskilling movement or initiatives are actually good enough to actually build our talents locally?
One, I would say within all those sectors that we spoke about, I think engineering talent is still key. I feel like we still need to create the right courses and programs to create right development talent or slash engineering talent for tech companies. I still think that's a key skill gap that needs to be improved on. Number two, I think some of the sectors talk about the green economy. Again, the economy is still very nascent across the whole of Southeast Asia. So I see some of the sovereigns hiring heads of ESGs, Petronas as a head of ESG as well. So I think it's moving in the right way. I see what's happening in Sarawak with hydrogen, and it's super exciting. It's something that's gathering attention from foreign investors, the likes of the Japanese, the Koreans. So I feel like there's a ripe ecosystem there. But again, I think to the point of where talent comes in, again, it's always chicken and egg, right? In the past, there's never been a market for talent for green energy, for any green initiatives, but now there is. So, and the talent pays well because there's a shortage of people there, supply, demand. So again, when I look at some of my peers in Indonesia, how they've come up, how the ESG scene has come up, it's all through just, recycling of talent. People who may not be, the right skill set yet, but I think training them up and growing them in that part and giving them exposure. That's in terms of, carbon credits, in terms of, batteries, EV storage, in terms of EVs, in terms of hydrogen. So there's a lot of ways to train up people. And given that the place is, the ecosystem is still so nascent, that you don't have to be so well advanced to get, the right talent to come in. So I think it's an area where, I know the government speaks about, the energy transition initiative. That's, I think, in the right way. And speaking to our investors, some of the foreign investors in Singapore and in the globe, is something that actually attracts attention to Malaysia.
So Raja, as for someone coming from TalentCorp itself, do you think that there could be more a radical policy that could be introduced to actually tackle this issue of brain drain right now? I mean, it's doing well, it's doing better, but do you think there could be a more radical policy in the future, or perhaps other policy other than radical policy?
Okay, I think one of the things that we really want to push is this internships, right? So, I think we have a pool of MNCs. We talk about Infineon, Intel, all moving to Malaysia, spending billions of dollars. But again, what is the positive externality to Malaysia? So again, what we are doing is we're talking to these companies at TalentCorp. We are saying, hey, how about we fund some of these internships and you co-fund them? But in essence, we can send it to your HQ, whether it's in the US, in Japan. And then we actually, why don't you bring them back to Malaysia to help your factories and your offices here in Malaysia. So again, it's very targeted, right? We speak to corporates, we craft an initiative that's targeted to them, and then we send our talent there, and then we bring them back here. So again, you're actually helping Malaysians get exposure, and then they have a job after that, because a lot of these companies hire thousands of Malaysians here, but they want better talent, they want people who know their culture, know their ecosystem, and pay it forward, right? So again, what can the government do more? I think we need to be more aggressive in terms of some of these crop subsidies for internships, because the companies in China, in Taiwan are looking for it as well. They want the government to be involved in their talent program because they want win-win situations on both sides. If I'm a Chinese company, if I see that the government is willing to fund some of these internships, but at the same time, I will do the offtake in 6 months or 12 months because I'll be funding their careers or their future internships. This is something that is win-win, and it shows that the government is very much into helping increase the talent density in Malaysia. And I think this is something that's super exciting. We can send a signal to the market that Malaysia is very open to business, because Vietnam is trying to do it, Indonesia is trying to do it, but they don't have the ecosystem that we have. We have the Penang, Malaysia, KL ecosystem that is amazing for a semiconductor, but we need to double down on it.
Last one before we end this session, we have about 1 minute left. Do you think we want focusing on the professionals right now of the topic of brain drain? Do you think we can create some kind of competitive incentives, some kind of strategy that actually could retain these professionals here, not just about the young talents?
Okay, I mean, I'll be direct. I think in terms of tax, I think one of the areas where our tax is still relatively high versus Hong Kong, Singapore, and that's where a lot of our Malaysians who are aggressive, who are doing well, are based in terms of their careers, right? I think if there's a way in terms of targeting sectors that are beneficial to the government, whether it's in terms of AI, in terms of technology, in terms of healthcare, green, we can incentivize some of these folks to come back and also maybe incentivize some of the folks who are already in the industry to get preferential tax treatment or tax credits. I think that'll be great, because again, we want to focus on high value jobs. We don't want your low level jobs. We want high value jobs, given incentives for 5-10 years to create a more affordable tax system. So in the end, people earn more, people will give back more, and more people will go to these industries because they want to earn more money as well. So again, you got to think of it, what's the self-interest of these people? Okay, one is, yes, they want to grow their career. Secondly, is money as well. If we can incentivize through preferential tax, it'll be a third tailwind for them to grow in this industry.